Welcome to Understanding the Law, Week in Review. The show is hosted by Peter Lamont and Bob Hughes and is a service of the law offices of Peter J. Lamont and Associates. The firm has offices in New Jersey, New York, Colorado, Puerto Rico, and affiliated offices throughout the country. Understanding the Law, Week in Review is a weekly radio broadcast discussing recent legal and business news and topics. As always, we welcome calls from our listeners. If you wish to discuss any of today's topics, please call our switchboard at 347-855-8831. Please note that this broadcast does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship with any of our listeners. And now, your hosts, Peter Lamont and Bob Hughes.
Well, good Monday morning. It's April 20th. Bob, can you believe it's April 20th already?
I am extremely happy it's April 20th. Actually, winter where I live takes so long. It's nice to see the sun.
I know. It's been such a bad winter. It was a bad winter here on the East Coast, and so I'm happy to see it too. So listen, today.
Yeah, cut the grass so bad.
Yeah, today we're trying something new because everybody loves new things. So we're going to be streaming live on Meerkat, which is cool. So hello out there to everybody on Meerkat. Do you know what Meerkat is, Bob?
I was about to start typing it in, and I didn't know how to spell it. I'm assuming, please spell it for myself and for the listeners.
It's MEERK or CAT. It's one of those.
You're going to give a K.
I'm on it. I just don't know how to spell it. But it's pretty cool, and we're going to try it out and see how it works. It actually streams live video through Twitter. So all the Twitter followers that we have out there can actually click on the link, and then it streams live. So we're going to try that out today, in addition to being live on YouTube Live and then live on Blog Talk Radio. So we're all over the place. And then if you miss it, you can either watch it on YouTube or you can download it from iTunes. So it's just, we're all over, Bob.
There you go. Yeah. Meerkat with a K, app.co.
Thank you. I cannot spell.
There you go. I had no idea.
It's pretty new, and figured we'd give it a try because, it's always fun to jump on new things and to give it a try. So we'll see how it goes. Before we get going into today's stories and business news, I just want to thank our sponsor. And today's show is sponsored by iScribed.com, and they are an audio transcription service. And I want to just talk for a second about iScribe because, Bob, when you have a business, you're a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, even other professions like radio host or screenwriter, or you name it, you could use a transcription service. And I want to just talk for a second about some of the problems that iScribed has fixed with the online transcription market. When I first started, Bob, I was at this big firm on Wall Street, and they had an entire department of people dedicated to just typing what lawyers dictated, and back then it was audio cassettes. And you had to pay all these people, and they were getting paid a decent amount per hour to do all this work. And in today's world, I think that, we're fighting so much for time because there's never enough time in the day. Yet small business and mid-size and even large companies, they either can't afford or don't want to spend a salary on somebody to just type dictation. So, I think that the solution has been typically you go to software, or recently you go to online transcription. But the problem has been that the software is not reliable. It crashes. It freezes. I get so frustrated with it. And then online services have typically been poor because they have people that aren't native English speakers. And so, you dictate something and there might be some inflection or some grammatical issue in your dictation, and you send it to them, which is always hard to send, and then they don't get it. And then when you get it back, there's all sorts of errors. So I haven't really found a service that's been good until now. And that's what I want to talk about. iScribe has come in, and they have a completely unique and different service. And what's so unique about it is this. First of all, super easy to upload your file. However you dictate it, whatever program software you use, they will accept that file format and be able to convert it. The other thing that's great is it's 99% accurate, which is really, really hard to do because even that software that's out there can't promise that. The other thing that I really like is it's a 2-step verification process, which I think
that makes a big difference.
Yeah, because you know what? When you dictate something, you don't want to have to get it back and reread it, but then reread it and proofread it at the same time. Because for me, there's always a difference between reading and proofreading. With iScribe, they've got someone to type it and then 2 people proofread it. 2 people, all of whom are native English speakers. So you're not going to have those typical problems that you've had in the past with online transcription services. So I think it's something that everybody should check out. But even better than that is the cost. So, instead of having to pay for somebody to sit there and you've got to give them minimum wage or whatever you're going to pay them if you're a small company, 89 cents per audio minute is what it costs to use iScribe. The other thing, Bob, that I really love is the fact that they offer non-disclosure agreements right off the bat. You know how many times I've had to go out and use a service and I've had to say to them, hey, listen, would you sign a non-disclosure agreement? Because what if you're a doctor? What if you're a lawyer and what information you're sending over there is confidential or privileged? You don't want to run into a situation where you find yourself violating HIPAA laws because you've sent something out to a transcriptionist. So for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm going to switch over real quick and just show you the iScribe website. They've got a really great frequently asked questions page. So all of the issues, all of the questions you might have, you can check it out there. 48-hour turnaround for all these services. So you dictate something, you upload it, which is super easy to do. All you do is go over to the upload order tab, and then you just add your files. It'll take your files. Somebody will start working on it. And within 48 hours, you're going to have your typewritten work returned to you that's double checked by 2 transcriptionists. And, you and I were talking before the show that, you're a radio guy and you've used transcription or you have to transcribe stuff too. It's not just for doctors and lawyers.
Yeah, no. And even how many people that that are, we'll call them journalists for lack of a better term, but they may have a blog and they may do interviews, they may do a webcast or a podcast, and they have to go back and transcribe their interview to put it into print. They can't. Not a lot of people are making money on webcasts and broadcasts. It's just not a profit-centered industry. But for a low enough cost, you can get that done for you, so you can do something else with your time.
Absolutely, and I think that's the best part about it. Time is such a valuable commodity now. We don't have enough of it. So instead of
you only make 24 hours a day.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it's a great service. And I would encourage everyone to go check out iScribe.com. There'll be a link in the show notes to the webpage. For those of you who are just watching on YouTube Live, you saw a demo of the website. And there's a free transcription demo that you can order as well to try out their services. So iScribe is something that I will be using, and I'm very excited about it and excited to bring it to you. So thanks for checking them out. And thanks to iScribe for sponsoring the show. All right, Bob. Got a lot of stuff to talk about today.
It's been a busy week. Now, it's the funny thing is there's been a couple that have just dominated the headlines, and finally one wrapped up. Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah.
Finally, it's done. It's been almost 2 years since he was arrested.
I know.
And finally, obviously found guilty. Going away for life. Luckily, he did not get well, I don't think they have the death penalty up yonder on the left side of the left-leaning side of the country up there. But is this just another example of I guess we'll call him an elite sports bully? What went wrong with this guy?
I really don't know. It was just it's kind of a tragedy because I think gone are the days when I was little and kind of, you idolized professional athletes.
Sure.
I remember getting the Wheaties box with Bruce Jenner on it. And well, now that's a completely other story. So I don't even want to touch Bruce Jenner.
between the beacons, Peter.
Yeah. Back when Bruce Jenner was an athlete and a man, I think that, but I remember idolizing these guys. And even in the 90s, when you had players like Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman from Dallas, but now it's so different because these guys, I think, you and I have talked about before, this football mentality that happens in high school that carries through the rest of their lives. I don't know. Did he think that he could get away with this?
I think I think he actually thought he could. I think he thought he had enough money. I think he thought he had enough insulation in what had happened. And you look back and you look at who was the guy in Back to the Future, the antagonist.
Biff Tannen.
Yeah, so there's your typical high school football stud, goes on through life to continue his ways that he's only known for 40 years. But as you climb that ladder of success, and people continue to just give you everything you want, anytime you want, and now you've got money to boot, I think it's exactly, he thought he could get away with it.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't going to happen this time.
It's kind of shocking, though, because I remember I was, I guess it was, when was it, Friday that they sentenced him? And I was coming back, or it was Thursday, it was one of the days last week. I was coming back from a business meeting, and I was on the turnpike in Jersey, and I stopped in at a rest area, and all these people were glued to the TV, and they were announcing the sentence and everything, and people were gasping. And I think that there's this idea that sports athletes should get a second chance, and people were like outraged. Oh my God, life in prison. He's such a young guy, and he's never going to get out, and his whole life is over. But I mean,
it is an outrage, but it's a tragedy.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you remember a couple weeks ago, we were talking about during the trial, this idea that he was carrying an iPad, not a gun. And obviously the jury didn't buy any of that, but you're right. It's a tragedy because now this guy who is young, I mean, I can't even imagine. Can you fathom being in your 20s and knowing that the rest of your life, you're going to be in a prison?
I got married at 30.
Can't believe it. It's crazy. Well, your prison's different.
Being married doesn't count.
That's
absolutely.
Different punishment.
Degree of choice there. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, no, you can't. And even from the outside, you have to think, like that's that disbelief that people really throw into it. It's like, oh my gosh, I was just watching him on TV. He was great. It's the fall from grace syndrome, I suppose. If there is one, I'll coin it and give me $1 every time you use it. But it's that view that these guys are so good. They're so high up. They're on the pedestal. They can never do anything wrong. Well, it's Mark McGuire. It's Barry. I mean, not to the degree, obviously. It's Barry Bonds. It's Sammy Sosa. It's Roger Clemens. It's all these guys who, oh man, they cheated. Say it ain't so. Come on, Joe. It's the disbelief is greater when the swing to the worship side is greater, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that you go back to the OJ trial and that whole debacle. People just didn't want to believe it because one of the last images I think that people had of OJ Simpson was in the Naked Gun series, being that bumbling assistant to Frank Drebin, and so first he's a football star, and now he's this bumbling idiot. And how could he do this? How could he murder somebody?
Sure.
And I think that had an impact in the jury's decision.
And always smiling or jumping through airports or whatever. There was never a bad light depicted on the guy.
Yeah. But you know what?
So
they're all people. It doesn't make a difference. And sometimes I think money just really can cloud your judgment.
Sure.
Money and power.
And you look back, and especially you look back now, and I don't know if that was probably, to me, that was really the opening, although the 24-hour news cycle had existed prior to, but that was the opening of the Pandora's box of news everywhere and saying, you know what, here's O.J. Simpson, this guy's never done anything wrong. Oh, wait, he's been beating his wife for how long? And he finally killed her, allegedly.
Yeah.
And that's when now everybody's into everything and why TMZ even exists. How many stories has TMZ broken in the last 5 years? Where it's because this ultra intrusive media like it or not, it's there, and it will pull you down if you're that high and you don't watch your P's and Q's.
You know what? We're living in a different world. There are cameras at every street corner, and everyone in the cities has cameras outside their buildings. I mean, you cannot...
Under persons.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't escape detection. This isn't the 1960s and 70s, and I think that in this world, some people believe it's a police state, some people don't, and clearly there's a lot going on with police throughout the country. And it seems like, right after the Michael Brown thing, all of these police misgivings have been brought to light and given so much attention. They existed before, but now it's just everybody's, out there and you can see it.
Hypersensitive about it.
Yeah. But these police officers, did you see the one where the guy got gunned down? He was shot 9 times, running out of the car.
Yeah.
But there was a guy there with his cell phone who recorded the whole thing. So you're living in an age.
Had he not?
Yeah, had he not, what would have happened? But everybody's got a video camera. Everybody's got a camera. Everybody's got recording devices on them. So hide you cannot.
And we said when the Michael Brown thing came down on the protesting, and we're not, the way the protests were going, we weren't happy about it. I don't think anybody was, maybe except for the protesters. But the thing that we were worried about, that we discussed, was, man, we really hope that any change that comes out of this isn't a flash in the pan. And I think that change has been the fact that it is starting to bring to light all these problems that did exist before. And now they're finally being brought out. And maybe people are more conscious about it now because, hey, this could be the next Michael Brown. I need to film this.
Yeah.
So if anything, the conscious of the community has woken up. And man, I just hope that I'm never a part of it.
And you know what? If you want to learn a lesson, if you're going to be that stupid to commit a crime like what Hernandez was convicted of, don't have an in-home security camera pointing right at you.
I've always been told never put anything in writing you want to defend in court. Now it's never film anything you want to defend in court because it's going to come and get you. Jeez. Yeah. So I saw some of that footage like, oops. Yeah. We forgot about that, didn't we? Yeah. Well,
don't you remember like the movies where people go in and they shoot the security cameras first? I mean, no, come on. Didn't you watch Die Hard?
Yeah, they're spray painting them or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, even going back to the 1960s and the old Adam West Batman, the Joker would come in and spray paint the cameras. He must have missed those.
Did you learn anything from your childhood television days? Pay attention.
Must be a generational gap. He must have missed that.
That's exactly correct. Batman should have stayed on longer. And Aaron Hernandez now a footnote in history, unfortunately. Just another sad case of money and talent and everything else wasted.
Yep.
So we're moving along on to some more interesting stuff that happened, recently happened anyway, with less the sentencing. How about this guy? I couldn't even believe I saw it happening. Pilot who landed a gyrocopter on the U.S. Capitol lawn blogged about why he did it. According to CNN.com, before landing a gyrocopter or a gyrocopter, depending on where you're from, on the Capitol lawn Wednesday, Doug Hughes, no relation, wrote about his intentions and the reasons behind them on a website called thedemocracyclub.org. The point of the flight, he said, is to spotlight corruption in D.C. and, more importantly, to present the solution or solutions to the institutional graft, the 61-year-old Florida postal carrier wrote in an online post titled, Your Pilot. My flight is not a secret, the post says. Before I took off, I sent an email to info@barackobama.com, because he gets that every day, explaining that shooting me down will be a bigger headache than letting me deliver these letters to Congress. Hughes' friend Michael Shanahan told CNN that Hughes called him Wednesday morning and told him to check out the website. The purpose of it was to call attention to the United States concerning our campaign finance laws or the lack thereof, according to Shanahan. Hughes had his first appearance in court scheduled for this coming Thursday. On Wednesday, he took off in his gyrocopter from Maryland and traveled through restricted airspace over Washington, landing on the Capitol's West Lawn. Inside the small personal aircraft, he had letters for every member of Congress urging campaign finance reform. There's no need to worry. I'm just delivering the mail, Hughes wrote in his post. The two men together run a website, nonprofit corporation called the Civilist Papers, which focuses on such issues, Shanahan said. In his post, Hughes also wrote that of his time spent in the Navy and described his family. Shannon said Hughes mentioned the idea when the two were brainstorming a couple years ago, and having grown up in Washington, Shanahan opposed the idea, wisely enough. I told him that no, that was an insane plan because the chances are he was going to get killed. Well, luckily, he made it through our incredible air defense system around the Capitol. Now everybody in ISIS is going, oh, gyrocopter, gotcha. Too small for radar. Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Hang glider. You know what?
Hang glider.
He probably did a much better job than the United States Postal Service would have at delivering these letters in a timely fashion. So maybe he's got another career out there.
If they'd all use gyrocopters. Oh.
You know what? It's
that's a good point.
Yeah, it's really sad though, because I think that, it's, yes, something, civil disobedience. He shouldn't have done it. Clearly, he's going to be punished for it. But it does point out and highlight something that I think is so concerning, because, you talk about how the U.S. has all of these enemies overseas, and every day it's a new report about ISIS recruiting. And then, you feel as though there's this area in D.C. that will always be protected, and the president and all the government officials, only to then find out that this guy can fly in, land on the White House lawn. And then you go back to months ago when people were jumping the fence. I just heard on the news today that now they're putting spiked barbs on the top of the fence so that people can't jump over. That does not do anything for the copters like this guy had. But
no.
So
their liability insurance may increase as well.
Yeah. I mean, if the CIA can see you sitting on a toilet, right? What is going on? Now, I wouldn't want to see this guy shot down and killed, because I don't think that he was doing anything other than proving a point. But wouldn't you think that we're sophisticated enough as a nation to be able to identify the threat and deal with it? I mean, they didn't even know he was there, and he had told people about this months in advance. I think it was like a year before his flight. He wrote to them and he said, "I'm coming." And then I guess nobody believed him.
The Secret Service and talked to him, or the FBI did. They interviewed the guy.
I don't understand it. I mean, what do you think? Do you think this guy should be punished and charged as a criminal?
He obviously has to pay for breaking the law. He full well knew what he was doing. He full well knew that it was illegal. However, and to that, he needs to have some sort of civil liability or criminal liability. But desperate times call for desperate measures, as the old adage goes. And it is, if nothing else, it should be a wake-up call to the government individuals that, you know what, we really are cheesing people off that bad that they will, and sadly it's a postal carrier, and we all know postal carriers don't have the best reputation when it comes to not freaking out and doing odd things. But it's so bad that we have people will literally get into a desk chair strapped to a motor and some wings and land a plane or some form of flying machine on our front lawn to deliver us the message that we aren't getting. That's the sad thing about it.
It is.
But yeah, he's got to pay some criminal cost per se. You can't, you don't need to make put him out front within the firing squad, but you can't just not punish the guy and say, oh, well, hey, he didn't mean it, because now you're opening the door.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think that they make an example, but it's a shame, because really they should be hiring him to highlight some of the other areas where, Washington's not secure. I don't like the idea. Really, give him a consulting fee.
Kind of like hiring the hacker that penetrates your system to figure out how not to penetrate your system.
Yeah, you know what? In one of the Transformers movies, they did that. They brought in all the hackers to help them defeat the Decepticons. Why not here? But what I don't like is, I obviously don't like the idea of government control where you've now entered into a police state. That's not good. But there does have to be a balance where there is some security in place. But I don't know. And then you've got the other side of this, which is what you were highlighting, the fact that here you've got these representatives that are supposedly in in DC on your behalf, yet nobody listens to you. And I think that it becomes very depressing as a nation, because what power, what rights, what vote do you have as an individual? Does anybody even know you're there? Is, I think, the sentiment. And so you elect these politicians, and I don't care who you elect. I've not seen a politician yet that does not have some level of corruption, that is somehow out for their own interests. So it's just, I don't think it's something that can ever be fixed, but talk about straying from what the founding fathers thought that this nation and the freedoms that it had would be.
Yeah, it's I don't know how long it's been bought and paid for, but it's been a very long time.
Yeah.
And that's a great point. Is everyone has pulled a string here or there.
Yep.
But the people have yet to figure out the fact. I mean, Congress has at one point in the past 12 months had a 10% approval rating. Here you have, this was before the election, yet you have a 90% retention level when it comes to reelection. So we're getting what we're buying.
Yeah. I can't do math, and I know that's bad.
No, they haven't figured out that the primary is where you do your work.
Mm-hmm.
Stop electing these people that you are so frustrated with.
Yeah.
I mean, I've yet to hear anybody say a good word about Congress. So
yeah, that's true.
Still, it's the best game in town, just whether or not it'll get fixed. But don't start strapping on rocket packs and trying to land in the front here. Maybe that's what they need. They need a guy out front with a rocket pack to start knocking down these gyrocopters. A man has sued the New York Police Department, saying he was denied seizure medicine even though he was wearing a hospital bracelet. ABAjournal.com telling us that Ronald A. Eleanor, I'm going to take a stab at that, says he was still wearing a hospital bracelet and had his medical discharge papers in his backpack in March when he was arrested by New York police along with a friend after officers allegedly saw smoke coming out of the windows of their vehicle. I don't know why that would get you arrested, but although the paperwork backed up his claim that he needed his anticonvulsant medication that he was carrying to avoid seizures, police refused to give it to him, resulting in 2 seizures and 2 hospitalizations during the 2 days he was held in Brooklyn, a federal civil rights suit alleges. He was released after the Kings County District Attorney's Office declined to prosecute, reports Newsweek. He says, my family members kept telling me you had 2 seizures in 1 day. You know you can die from seizures, right? Said Eleanor. My doctors told me this. You've got to make a case against them, because if you don't, suppose this continues to happen to a lot of other people. The city's law department told Newsweek it is reviewing the lawsuit. Have you ever been involved in something like this? Because people, I don't think they understand what their rights may be once they're arrested, when it comes to medical access.
Yeah, no, I have been involved in cases like this, and I unfortunately have been involved on the defense of these claims. And I say unfortunately because the cases that I have seen have involved people who, for the most part, were just full of crap. And so we were defending the police departments. I've not actually been involved in a case where you have somebody who might have committed a crime of some sort, but yet is denied civil rights. When I was defending these claims, I remember there was a case with a guy who was pulled over, who was sort of antagonizing the police because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt and he didn't have any identification with him. And they ultimately took him down to the ground, and he had some scratches and nonsense. But clearly, when you watch the video of that, his civil rights weren't violated. He did it. Then it was a case involving somebody in jail who claimed that they weren't being provided proper medical treatment or medical care. And again, that's just not the case. This is a different scenario, because here you've got a guy who says, I need my meds, here's my bracelet, and they say, we don't care, or we don't believe you, and then the guy has seizures. So this is a case where even if he had done something wrong, he's still entitled to a moderate level of civil rights. And even when you're in prison, you still have some civil rights. And again, if the prison system is designed to sort of rehabilitate, or at least that's what some people theorize, to rehabilitate people, how can you subject them to such unfair treatment and punishment if you expect them to turn around and rehabilitate themselves. I don't know that that's setting a good example.
Sure. No, and well, in this case, if everything he says is true, this has got to be this supersedes, I would think, like you had said, the amount of immunity that a police department would have, because this is just plain flat out neglect.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think that you would be able to get around some of those police protections and immunities, because remember, in order to have a civil rights claim against a municipal entity, you've got to be able to show that their conduct was egregious, was gross negligence beyond mere negligence. And I would say in this situation where somebody has a bracelet on identifying a situation where they're asking multiple times for medication and they're being ignored, I would think that probably rises to a level of gross negligence. But I've seen cases like this where the defense is based around the fact that it was a situation where we felt threatened, or we used our best judgment at the time. And so it'll be interesting to see where it plays out. But again, I mean, you do have some level of civil rights, even if you're being arrested. So I think in this case, I think that the police probably screwed up, and I think that he might get something out of this.
Sure. No, and sadly, hopefully, hopefully someone will change their process as well out of it. It's not always about the money. And I would sue for $1 if I get you to change your ways.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and more cop complaints, as we talked about earlier on in the show. A canine attack victim wins access to cop complaints. CourthouseNews.com telling us Atlantic City cannot shield information that identifies other individuals who complained about the police officers. One man is suing after a canine unit mauled him. Federal judge has ruled. David Connor Castellani admits he was drinking underage when the Tropicana Casino and Hotel in Atlantic City, New Jersey, threw him out during the wee hours of June 15th of last year. Many of the allegations from a lawsuit Castellani has filed that October match the video surveillance posted on, of course, CNN. Excuse me. The video shows the 20-year-old Castellani yelling at the officers from across the street. Always a good idea. Though Castellani says he is merely asking for help finding a ride home. And maybe it was the text you used. He says a heated verbal exchange then ensued when the officers mocked and ridiculed him. Castellani says he did not threaten the officers, but that they suddenly bum rushed him, quote unquote, and began to viciously assault him, according to the complaint. Indeed, the video shows 4 officers run toward Castellani and tackle him to the ground. I am not resisting, Castellani allegedly cried out as the officers punched, kneed, kicked, and clubbed him. Castellani says a 5th officer arrived and joined the group in kneeing him and striking him with batons as they struggled to put him in handcuffs. One of the hands was allegedly cuffed when Officer Sterling Wheaton arrived in a canine unit. Castellani says Wheaton ordered the dog to attack him, though he was completely subdued and helpless, according to the report. Castellani's complaint notes that Wheaton has never been disciplined for 21 civilian complaints of misconduct filed against him between 2008 and 2011, including 15 for excessive force or assault. The last year, U.S. District Judge Renee Baum agreed to let the officers stay Castellani's suit pending resolution of his criminal charges. The Atlantic City, in the meantime, agreed to produce internal affairs files related to the officer for a 6-year period. Though the city wanted to redact the identifying information of the witnesses and individuals who filed the complaints, U.S. District Judge Anne Marie Donio shot that motion down on April 9th. Without access to the names and addresses of the complainants and witnesses, plaintiff would be forced to accept Atlantic City's conclusion in the IA reports without any means or avenues for independently verifying the accuracy of the reports. Donio wrote, indeed, the names and addresses of individuals who could verify or contradict the accuracy of the IA reports and shed light on the extent of the IA investigations which plaintiff claims were insufficient or inadequate, clearly are relevant. Now, the present litigation involves claims pertaining to alleged police officer misconduct and performance of police officer duties and investigations of their performance, and it is a matter of great public importance, Donio wrote. Basically, they try to protect themselves. Say, well, yeah, we investigated and we didn't find anything, and you just got to take that. That's not going to be good enough. That seem like that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. You know, back when I was defending these claims, IA files were something that plaintiffs always wanted, and there was a reason for it, because if you are, going to look at your civil rights and what has been violated or potentially been violated, you want to see if there's a pattern of behavior, because a pattern of behavior will push through any of these immunities that might exist out there. And so it's very common.
Okay.
And I think that it's important if you are really looking at the interest of justice. I think that, look, the reason that we've got a 3-system government with the executive, legislative, and judicial is for checks and balances, because you don't want one to have more power than the other. Why not the same thing here with police? I mean, you're giving them power, you're giving them authority to enforce the laws. Not write them, but enforce them, which is sometimes more difficult than creating them. But where's the checks and balances? And I think that with IA files and with providing a plaintiff with this information so that they can independently verify whether or not the information is accurate, I think is a good checks and balance system. So I am a big believer that IA files should be discoverable, and you should have to produce information concerning the complainants in those records so that a plaintiff claiming civil rights violations can go and verify it. And, it might extend the case longer because now there's more discovery. But I think that civil rights are something that it's so important, because people come to this country. I don't know about now, but people used to come to this country because of those civil rights. And why would you want to injure the rights of the people of this country? So I think that this is a good decision. I think it's the right decision. And I think that it should happen more freely. But in every case that I've ever seen, there's always been an argument about whether or not those IA files are discoverable. And one point, Bob, that I want to make: discoverable and admissible are two different things. We had a case. I had a case I defended where somebody asked for and obtained through the federal court system IA files of an officer. And one of the IA complaints involved brandishing a weapon while off duty in a bar. And they wanted, they had access to this, but they wanted to use that at trial. But it had absolutely nothing to do with the issues that they were presenting in their case. It was completely separate. It didn't involve any sort of brutality. It was completely different. And the court ruled that it was not admissible. And so something's discoverable, meaning you have a right to see it, but it might not be admissible.
So in this case, if this guy, let's back up to the beginning of what caused this event. If it is found that for some ungodly reason, what happened to him was warranted, does that basically remove the court's, or I say the court, not really the court's ability, but does that remove the relevancy of any IA reports for excessive force or assault?
It might. I mean, if they were able to show that he was absolutely belligerent and hostile, and there was a threat, and there was no other way for these officers to protect themselves or to enforce the laws, but to do what they did, then that might not even be relevant. But if he were to be able to find in the IA files other victims, other complainants who have had similar things happen to them, brutality, the use of canine dogs, then those IA reports and those witnesses might be relevant, but it all has to be very similar to the events that happened with him. So you couldn't have, for example, an IA report that says we had a drug sniffing dog who ran through the house, found a stash of cocaine, and when the owner of the cocaine tried to grab it, the dog bit him. That's not going to be admissible because that's not relevant.
Right.
That's not a brutality issue. That is a dog who wants to protect his cocaine.
And who can blame the dog generally?
Exactly. So that's where that's going to go.
Dogs are fierce addicts. But I guess the overall crux of it is you have some rights when it comes to what you can discover when you're in a situation battling City Hall, per se.
Yes. Yep.
So there you go. Something hitting close to the heart, right in the stomach, actually. Illegal lobster harvest costs 3 people $22.4 million. That's a lot of red lobsters. Green lobsters, as a matter of fact. 3 men convicted of illegally harvesting rock lobsters, according to courthousenews.com, in South Africa, importing them to the U.S. They must pay a $22.4 million restitution order, the second court ruled. Arnold Benjes and Jeffrey Knoll pleaded guilty in Manhattan federal court to conspiracy to commit smuggling and to violating the Lacey Act, which bans trade in illegally retrieved wildlife. David Benjes also pleaded guilty to conspiracy to violate the Lacey Act. According to prosecutors, the men harvested rock lobsters along the coast of South Africa from 1987 to 2001 and then shipped them to the United States through their company, Hope Bay Fishing Industries. The men were indicted in the U.S. in 2004, and after entering their guilty pleas, they were sentenced to prison terms in varying length and ordered to pay $13.3 million to the U.S. Now, although the plea agreements acknowledged that further restitution was a possibility, the district court deferred addressing it at the time. Later, the United States sought restitution on behalf of South Africa, but the court rejected that effort, holding that the nation hadn't been a victim of the defendant's offenses under U.S. law. The second court threw out that decision in 2011, and the United States moved to dismiss the men's appeal of the restitution order because they refused to comply with a deposit to transfer assets to a Swiss bank. These guys are hiding money now. The men argued that the order violates their Sixth Amendment rights because the restitution amount was not based on the value of lobsters decided by a jury. But U.S. Circuit Court Judge John M. Walker Jr. found that under the Mandatory Victims Restitution Act and Victims and Witness Protection Act, no maximum restitution amount is specified. Therefore, a judge cannot find facts that would cause the amount to exceed a prescribed statutory maximum, he wrote. The defendant cited Southern Union Company versus the United States, where a jury found the defendant had violated an environmental statute but could not be assessed an $18 million fine because it exceeded the $50,000 statutory maximum. Basically saying, hey, the law says you can charge this, can't overcharge me. In this case, there was never a determinate amount of maximum restitution that the defendants faced. Under the MVRA, restitution is always determined with respect to the value of the property that is lost, the 3-judge panel found. The district court could not and did not exceed a maximum that did not exist. It held that because David Benjes only allocated to involvement with the conspiracy from 1999 to 2001, his portion of the order potentially may not include any actions by the defendants before 1999. Now they're saying if David Benjes' understandings of the scope of the conspiracy joined in 1999 was such that he knew or reasonably should have known about some or all of the conspiracy's past imports, his restitution order should encompass those amounts. Basically, if you knew what was going on, you got to pay for it, Walker wrote. Right. However, if David Benjes joined the conspiracy without reasonable knowledge of his co-conspirators' past activities, then at that point he should not be held liable for the loss caused by those activities. That's really, how do you prove what he did and didn't know?
Yeah, and that's through testimony and through whether or not a jury believes him. I mean, those are questions of fact. It's interesting because in this case, on their appeal, they tried to argue the Sixth Amendment rights that they should have access to a jury. And the judge is essentially saying there's no factual information out there that a jury need decide. So this is a real good example of a case where, we've talked in the past about judges decide questions of law, juries decide questions of fact. So the judge, in deciding that there's no statutory maximum and therefore could charge these lobster hunters whatever he wanted, is essentially saying that, no, there's no Sixth Amendment right violation here because I'm a judge. This is a question of law. I can interpret the statute and I can charge whatever I want because this is my interpretation of the statute, not a factual issue. As it's compared to the conspiracy charge where now you're exactly right. How do you prove it? Well, now you've got to introduce fact and you've got to introduce evidence and testimony, and a jury has to decide whether or not they believe that testimony. That becomes a question of fact. So this is a good example of, showing the dichotomy between questions of law, questions of fact, and what can be decided and not decided. So, I mean, all in all, this is kind of a crazy case when you think about, how profitable illegal lobster harvesting can be.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't know. I'm in the wrong business. I need to fish more.
Yeah, just don't go down to South Africa.
My wife gets mad enough when I say I have to go play. Just call it work, she says. You're not playing, you're working. I play guitar and I get paid, so I can't help that. But yeah, it is. The interesting thing I found about this was that how long they were doing it for.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about 15 years these guys were doing this, and how did they get? I'm even more curious about how they got caught. How did they screw that up?
I know.
But hiding money in I'm sure hiding money in Swiss bank accounts were probably, it could be a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah, I think the Swiss bank account thing will definitely get you. But certainly, again, a good example in this case about questions of law, questions of fact, and just don't illegally harvest lobsters. The bottom line here.
Well, even we're talking about lobster in this particular case, it could be anything.
Yeah.
You know, people hunt probably down near every state in the union, maybe with the exception of Rhode Island. I don't know if I've never been there. Doesn't seem big enough to house a deer. You'd be surprised what people will do. And then, between poaching out of season, especially in Michigan, there's always stories of people doing stupid things when it comes to poaching wildlife. And so, I mean, you get whacked pretty good if you're not paying attention for it. And I think, matter of fact, isn't there a seizure rule where they basically can take everything you used?
Yeah.
And you may be different if you use your vehicle, if you use the guns, whatever you used in the commission of that illegal game capture, you lose.
Yeah. Depending upon the state, that's true. And they can take everything.
Yeah. And I think Michigan's one of them. Yeah. So pay attention, folks.
If you're going to illegally hunt, the key is to just bring your wife.
Watch that.
Leave my gun. You can take her. I'll make the sacrifice.
Right over my head. I'm sorry for that. Okay. Something we haven't talked about this particular situation, but we talked about how people understand other people. And a fired lawyer has blamed gay conversion therapy. According to courthousenews.com in Sacramento, a Sacramento psychiatrist who practices gay conversion therapy defamed a gay attorney prison guard, which I don't even want to get into ambulance chasing right there, an attorney prison guard, to his employer after confining him with a large dog under compelled coercion, the lawyer claims in court. Calvin Chang says he was referred to Dr. Benjamin Kaufman after filing a discrimination complaint against his employer, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Chang, who'd complained that he was denied promotion because of his sexual orientation, claims there were no facts or lawful basis whatsoever to justify his referral to Kaufman. Chang says he is a licensed attorney with more than 20 years of law enforcement experience. In his April 15th complaint in Superior Court, Chang says Kaufman told him that he, the doctor, was a conservative Republican and thus he knows discrimination, implying that apparently conservative Republicans are the real victims of discrimination, not gay men. Chang says in the lawsuit that Kaufman is a nationally recognized and outspoken critic of gay men, whom he views as having a mental disorder. He describes the homosexual condition as a self-destructive behavior, a sexual deviation, or deeply disturbing and a threat. Now, Chang again claims Kaufman disclosed private information to the prisons department, including false allegations that Chang was a threat to specific law enforcement officials and that these lies cost him his job. He claims that the prison department fired him just after his fourth and last session with Kaufman, 3 years before he became eligible for a public safety pension. Chang now practices law in Sacramento, so he fell back in his other degree. Yeah. Chang says Kaufman subjected him to reparative therapy, which without his consent, and therefore, then threatened to have him fired if he didn't accept the prison department's offer of demotion. Says Kaufman subjected him to discriminatory and threatening behavior because of his sexual orientation. Among other things, he says he was subjected to confinement in a room with a large dog under compelled coercion and behind numerous locked doors. Now, of course, Chang says that during one therapy session, he asked Kaufman what caused him to conclude that Chang was unable to perform the essential functions of the job, and Kaufman replied, "The idea that you're being discriminated against on the basis of lifestyle, basis of skin color or ethnicity, and you're seeing everything through that lens." Kaufman declined to comment on the lawsuit and referred Courthouse News to his attorney, who could not be reached for comment. Now, Chang is seeking damages for civil rights violations, defamation, discrimination, aiding and abetting discrimination, privacy invasion, fraud and deceit, violation of medical privacy, retaliation, professional negligence, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Wow. My first question is, what is a lawyer doing being Department of Correction prison guard, but that has nothing to do with anything. This is, obviously it's been discussed, reparative therapy. They say it's never, I don't say it's never going to work, but they say it's not a recommended process. How does the Department of Corrections end up referring this guy to somebody to do this? That'd be my crux of the argument.
It's crazy, and it clearly, in my mind, is discriminatory, just based upon the fact that they would refer him out to a conversion therapy. I mean, listen, whether you think that homosexuality is right, wrong, indifferent, it doesn't make a difference. The fact is that you can't discriminate against somebody on the basis of sexual orientation. And the idea of gay conversion therapy in the first place makes absolutely zero sense to me. I think that in and of itself, I mean, look, somebody said to me once that people in the conversion therapy industry, they themselves have some sort of mental issue if they're going into a profession like that to begin with. But it's interesting because this whole practice is snake oil. And when you take somebody and you say to them, listen, you're homosexual and we can cure that, that suggests that being homosexual is a disease, which it is not. And now you're going to, as the Department of Corrections, send somebody to another guy who believes that homosexuality is a disease. How is that not discrimination? It makes no sense.
It's not like this happened. The way this story set up, it's like it happened 20 or 30 years ago, if not longer.
Yeah.
Especially in California, which tends to be a little more progressive than other states of the union. So it's interesting to me that they could even possibly rely on this Dr. Kaufman at all. But apparently, with the stack of damage directives he's asking for, it's pretty much going to cover everyone.
Yeah. The most important issue that you identified is, what is a lawyer doing as a corrections officer? And I'm going to tell you,
target-rich environment.
the profession of being a lawyer can sometimes be so absolutely frustrating that you almost can understand why people are looking for alternative careers. And it's funny that being a lawyer is his fallback position. So, I would like to talk to him and say to him, what made you want to do this? Because that's really an interesting question. So
what made you want to be a lawyer? You had it so good. You were a prison guard.
Yeah, exactly.
There is something wrong with you, but it has nothing to do with reparative therapy.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, put him in a room and put him in a room with a big dog and some latex and see how he does.
Give him a canine. The other thing that's interesting though is what you pointed out about Obama and the April 8th end to this conversion therapy. I think that everyone at this point knows that conversion therapy is not really a reliable means of therapy in any sense.
The funny thing is about it, the term conversion therapy seems fairly oxymoronic to me.
Yeah.
I recognize that you are not white, but we're going to make you white through therapy.
Well, didn't they do that with Michael Jackson?
Through plastic surgery, that's different.
Okay.
Now, he had a skin condition, allegedly, and I don't know. I'm not seeing his chart, so you can neither confirm or deny any kind of actual skin condition. But yeah, it smacks of a bloodletting to cure you.
Yeah.
You look back in medieval times. There was a Saturday Night Live skit with Steve Martin. You need a good bloodletting. He was the doctor, and it's so bass backwards. I guess when you're as with any, and I want to tiptoe around the word I want to use, as with any situation that is viewed to be out of the norm by mainstream society, they start to, what can we do to normalize these these individuals, or at least normalize them in our eyes.
Right.
And that's when things start to, the wheels come off the buggy. And it takes a while sometimes to figure it out. And as wrong as it's ever been, it's going to continue to happen.
You know, I think that's interesting, because the conversion therapist, him or herself, if they believe they can fix you, right, then they believe you're broken. So they're either doing this because they themselves are not comfortable with homosexuality, or they just think that it's a cash cow and they can bilk people out of money. It's one of the other.
Sure.
So I think it was a good. I mean,
that's what that leaves that snake oil.
Yeah. So maybe Obama did something right by passing that law. That's good.
Careful. You're on dangerous ground there. I'm starting to write my letter of resignation right now. Let's not go overboard.
Let's not.
No, in all seriousness, yeah, there's a degree of compassion there, but a lot of it's common sense. You'd like to hope.
Yep.
But unfortunately, common sense doesn't always win out. Mom says a school let an abuser slide. According to courthousenews.com, in McAllen, Texas school district didn't fire a teacher who sexually violated a student, quote unquote, likely due to his status as an educator of the year. The boy's mother claims in court. I wonder what he teaches. Yeah. Judith Moreno sued McAllen Independent School District on behalf of her son, JM, on April 15th in federal court. Moreno claims JM's debate team teacher, Ezequiel Gonzalez, who was at McAllen High School, first took advantage of her son on a trip to San Antonio in early 2012. During a debate team tournament, Gonzalez, quote unquote, engaged JM in inappropriate sexual conduct in a hotel room on 2 consecutive nights, Moreno has claimed. The district is the only defendant in the lawsuit. Moreno's attorney, Javier Pena, did not return a request for an explanation about why she did not sue Gonzalez. Great question. After returning from the trip, Ezequiel Gonzalez continued to engage JM in inappropriate conduct, even doing so while on campus of other states. Moreno claims that this went on throughout the spring 2012 semester until she had just heard about it. Moreno promptly informed officials at McAllen High School, who feigned an investigation into the matter by pulling JM, a minor, out of class and questioning him without a parent. Good call. However, no action was taken against Gonzalez, likely due to his status as an educator of the year. And Moreno claims that school officials told her to contact police and wash their hands of the matter. McAllen ISD spokesman Mark May said Gonzalez no longer works for the school and that he could not comment on the lawsuit because the district has not yet been served. Presumably, according to the complaint, the offending educator was allowed to leave MISD with the ability to continue to work at other schools as an educator. Moreno claims that Gonzalez was mocked by students for always pulling male students out of class to talk to them in private. She seeks damages for civil rights and Title IX violations, assault and battery, negligence, and infliction of emotional distress. There's a website, believe it or not, that tracks educator-student involvement, and it's sad that there's as many as there are. There's a little bit more to this story that I kind of pulled out because of the length of the description. There's a lot of history with this particular high school involving the possibility of sexual deviance by their educators. But unfortunately, a lot of rumors speculated based on it. The funny thing is why do, this is the question for you, Peter, why do schools take an educator like Gonzalez and say, this is what's up, here's your opportunity to resign, and they don't do anything about it? This guy goes and teaches somewhere else.
I think that part of it is it's easier to enter into an agreement with this guy where he resigns than it is to fire him. I think that at least that's the decision that some school districts have debated over. Where do we have liability? What's the recourse going to be for Gonzalez? Is he going to turn around and sue us? We're now dealing with this lawsuit that's been filed. Is this the next thing? Some sort of labor law dispute, some sort of discrimination claim? Are we going to next be sued by him? So I think that sometimes it's just easier, and perhaps they view it as not as much liability. But I think that the better and stronger approach, when you have been able to identify something like this going on, I personally think you have to fire this person. I think that, when they go for their next job interview, wherever they go, I think that when they say, where did you work last? Can we call your employer? I think you would want that individual to have to say no. And, obviously they're not going to tell you why they were fired. But, I think that firing somebody like this really is the best course of action. I know that it might create some additional work or worry for the school district, but I think it's the better approach than to just let him resign.
And the thing is, if the allegation is made and they suspend the teacher pending the investigation, is there a degree of responsibility on the part of the district when it comes to the union's going to come back and say, you suspended him for nothing?
Yeah.
So we're going to hammer you now. Is that also part of the concern?
Absolutely. And I think that, you talk about unions just kind of have fallen by the wayside in today's modern world, unless you're talking about, some of the cable or not televisions, but like Verizon, right? Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
I think you see it there, and you see it in education. And I think that there is this fear that you're going to go to the union and there's going to be an issue, and then there's going to be a strike, or there's going to be some other retaliation. And so it's just easier to let him resign. I think that absolutely is a factor that they consider. And, these school boards, even in the smallest of towns, they typically don't make these decisions by themselves. And when they do make them by themselves, they always end up being the incorrect decision. But, they generally will consult with the board attorney. I don't know. I've haven't seen a school district, at least in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, where they don't have some form of legal representation, even if it's on a case-by-case basis, where they can go and consult with somebody before they do it. Because I find that in the school districts, their biggest thing is, let's pass the buck. Let's say that the attorney told us to do it. Because look at what school boards are made up of. They're generally made up of volunteers, and they don't want that liability. So pass the buck.
Nor do they understand what they can and can't do half the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true too. So, interesting point here, though, is the question, why wasn't Gonzalez sued?
Yeah, that's the thing.
And I think
you'll never know.
Yeah. I think that, in a state like New Jersey, where we've got a law that's called the entire controversy doctrine, they want you to bring all necessary parties in to the lawsuit. And that sometimes can be a bar for later, trying to bring somebody in. But it's possible here that they know that Gonzalez has no money. He's not a deep pocket defendant. So go against the school board because they have insurance, and maybe that's what is the motivation. Maybe they have some other plan, but I would think you would want to sue everybody and sort it out because, a jury, at least in states like New Jersey, can still apportion liability to somebody else. If this is all Gonzalez's fault, the fact that you don't sue him in New Jersey, at least, doesn't mean that a jury is going to be able to say that, all right, since you didn't sue Gonzalez, we can't consider other people's negligence. We can only consider the school boards. They would look at this and they would say in their minds, I think that Gonzalez is the fault here. He is, let's say he has had no criminal past, no history of sexual misconduct, nothing. And it was, he was background checked and screened, everything checked out and verified. And all of a sudden, he just had a moment of weakness and did this. And let's say it only happened one time. Then I think that the school board would have a pretty good defense. We didn't know this was an action of an individual. We had no warning. There was nothing that we could do to prevent it. And as soon as we found out about it, we fired him. Now, if Gonzalez isn't in that lawsuit, that doesn't mean that they can't say this is the independent action of Gonzalez and the school board has nothing to do with it. They can still say, no finding of fault on the school board. I don't understand why they didn't, but that could just be, for the ease of making this lawsuit, I guess, more manageable for the attorney.
Sure. Well, we'll find out if it ever gets settled and makes headlines.
Yeah.
Something that has been making headlines lately, freedom of speech and Yelp. Yelp does not have to unmask reviewers, a Virginia high court has ruled. According to Wall Street Journal, WSJ.com, Virginia's highest court ruled on Thursday that Yelp does not have to disclose the identities of online users accused by a small business owner of posting fraudulent negative reviews about his carpet cleaning business. The court decided the issue on jurisdictional grounds, not on the more controversial constitutional question about the rights of online reviewers to post critical comments behind a veil of anonymity. The closely watched dispute before Virginia's highest court centered on a complaint brought by the owner of Hadid Carpet Cleaning Incorporated of Springfield, Virginia. Joe Hadid had claimed his suburban business was besieged by a rash of harsh Yelp reviews in 2012. That summer, he sued 7 reviewers for defamation and demanded that Yelp disclose their identities. Excuse me. Mr. Hadid claimed the reviews were posted by competitors and says sales plummeted after the comments were posted. Yelp argued that without proof of his claims, the users had a First Amendment right to post anonymously. The state trial court and the Virginia Court of Appeals sided with Mr. Hadid, holding Yelp in contempt for not turning over the names. The company then took its case to the Virginia Supreme Court. As the Associated Press reports, the justices reviewing the case concluded that the lower court judge lacked the authority to make Yelp unmask the reviewers. The opinion states, in sum, we conclude that the circuit court was not empowered to enforce the non-party subpoena deuces. This term is what, Peter?
Deuces take them.
There you go, brushing up on my Latin today. Directing Yelp to produce documents located in California in connection with Hadid's underlying defamation action against the John Doe defendants in the Virginia Circuit Court. Although the General Assembly has expressly authorized Virginia courts to exercise personal jurisdiction over non-resident parties, it has not expressly authorized Virginia courts to compel non-resident non-parties to produce documents located outside of Virginia. Yelp would be that party. The decision is a blow to Virginia's small businesses, Mr. Hadid's attorney told Law Blog by email. Said he could still petition for a rehearing. Yelp's litigation director, Aaron Schur, posted a statement about the ruling on the company's official blog. Says this case highlights the need for stronger online free speech protection in Virginia and across the country. Businesses that want to bully and intimidate customers who can express displeasure with less than stellar consumer experiences should not be able to obtain their personal information without providing sufficient evidence that they have been wronged, which Hadid failed to do in this case. This seems like an awfully complex solution to a really simple problem to me.
Do you have the answer?
Do I have my answer?
Yes.
It would seem that I think Yelp is in the business to make money.
Yep.
They make money off ads, and they are providing a forum. They're not providing a filter. They're providing a forum. And what's happening here is, they don't filter anyone. I don't like Peter J. Lamont Law Services. I don't like Peter. I think Peter stinks personally. He has nothing to do with his lawyer ability. But I'm going to get on Yelp and I'm going to discredit him.
Yep.
I never had any business with him, but I'm going to do that. And there's going to be nothing that can stop me. That seems incredibly wrong.
Yes.
But apparently it's okay.
Yeah, it is incredibly wrong. And I think that this goes back to something I've talked about in the past, and that's how small business just cannot compete. This is not a country about small business. This is not a country that promotes growth of small business. It is a big box country. It is a big office, big firm country. They don't really care about the small business owner. How devastating could something like Yelp be to a small business owner? Significantly.
Oh, yeah.
You could take a small restaurant or a dry cleaner or any sort of small business where their reputation is all they have, and you can tarnish it and trash it. I think that I'm actually surprised by Schur's comments. He's the litigation guy for Yelp. I think that really his responsibility should be, well, let's make sure that we have a verification process so that the people who are identifying issues with a consumer have to go one or two steps more before just posting a review. Because, I don't know if this guy is wrong or right with respect to the competitors posting these complaints, but certainly it's conceivable, it's possible. And what is to stop, a business from doing that? I mean, where I live, it's so densely populated that, you're going to have a bagel store, and then a quarter of a mile down the road, you're going to have another bagel store. And then a half a mile, there's another bagel store. And so, if bagel store A wants to compete and wants to be underhanded, why not say, there's cockroaches in bagel store B's stuff?
Sure.
Post it on Yelp.
Sure.
I think,
and the sad thing is what degree are some of these cases going to be used as precedences going forward? I
think this is going to be the start. I mean, I think this is the start of some significant legislation that is going to be passed in the next few years, because you cannot have online reviewers destroying the business of a small business owner simply out of spite or anger or even, competition. And I think that if you, Yelp, are going to make millions of dollars, because I would imagine Yelp makes millions of dollars, and you're going to derive the benefit of the advertising dollars that you are raking in on a daily basis, then you have to do something to protect consumers, not consumers, the business owners. I'm all for, protecting consumers, but at what point are you going to just raise your hands and surrender and say, well, it's not us, we just provide a forum? Well, you're making millions off this forum and hurting others.
What's the difference between, I'm glad you said that, it's not us, we're just providing a forum, Napster.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not us, we're just providing the platform. We can't control what people do.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And you know where Napster is now.
Yes. So I'm currently residing in the Where Are They Now file.
Yeah.
It's interesting now. You take this case or take this situation, and I'm sure you've heard of the business in Western Michigan that has decided that their name is Diesel Tech, and they've decided that on Facebook he's going to write, "I will not fix a gay person's car."
Yep.
And so, and that's the short story. And of course, the expected fallout has occurred. Threats to the business, burning it down, this, that, and the other thing. Now, if I were an activist and I were smarter than the average bear, I would say, here's how we handle this. Everybody, instead of defaming this guy and beating him up for being anti-gay, everybody go on Yelp and Angie's List and everything else and start writing poor reviews. He didn't put the oil cap back on my car. I drove away, my brakes fell off.
Right.
Start doing that instead of, because you're just going to, now that's going to influence people to say, oh, well, I don't know if this is an activist or this is a true story.
Yep. Yeah.
You're drawing fire from the other side by saying, oh, we'll burn his place down. Oh, he's hateful. Oh, well, now you're going to draw fire from the other side. No. There's power in anonymity.
Yeah.
And the shows.
Yeah.
So any gay activists, you feel free to use my methodology.
It's just you've got to be able, though, to do something if you're Yelp to stop this, because when I was little, when you didn't like somebody, you'd subscribe them to 20 copies of Playboy a month, right? But now your pranks and the stuff that you can do to somebody behind the veil of anonymity, it's really devastating, because it could put businesses out of business for something that they did not do. And how is that right? And that's where you see the flip side, where you see a lot of these defamation suits that have come to play. Mm-hmm. I think that part of the problem here is that Virginia was just trying to duck the issue, and they got out on a technicality because they wouldn't enforce an out-of-state subpoena. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. But it certainly highlights the fact that small business does not have the protection that it needs in this country.
No, and whether or not something will be done will be, well, to just wait and see.
Yep.
So, speaking of getting something done, and this is not small business, but I think this is brilliant. I wish I had thought of this. Clothier settles a suit with Eagles singer over, I love this tag, Donna Henley and Take It Easy. Ad. ABAjournal.com telling us an outdoor clothing retailer known for its irreverent approach has apologized to Eagles singer Don Henley and made a charitable donation to resolve a California lawsuit over its use of his name for an upscale T-shirt. An advertisement featuring the slogan, Don A. Henley and Take It Easy, riffing on the title of an early hit by the band, was inappropriate, says Duluth Trading Company on its website. For that, we are deeply regretful, and we apologize, not just to Mr. Henley, but to anyone else who took offense. Why would you take offense?
Right.
We have learned a valuable lesson and thank Mr. Henley for helping us appreciate, lawsuit, the importance that he and others artists place in their publicity rights. Henley has trademarked his name and routinely refuses to allow his persona or music to be used for commercial purposes, reports the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Now, it is not known how much Dutch trading company donated to the Walden Woods project to settle the suit. The settlement also includes an agreement or an agreed permanent injunction that bars the company from using Henley's name, the Hollywood Reporter is reporting.
Yep.
I think that's brilliant. But it wasn't you, Don Henley. It was a different Don Henley.
Donna Henley, yes.
How does this, honestly, I think this is brilliant, and I think that he should be able to use it. I think it's a load of crap.
You know what? Don Henley is one of those guys that has, you look back to the 1970s and the Eagles, and he's got the long hair and the beard, and you're thinking, oh, this is just a hippie, right? This guy is so smart, and he's always been one to protect his image and likeness. And this isn't the first time that he's filed a lawsuit. I mean, this guy.
I didn't know that.
Oh, no. He knows his way around. I remember years ago, all like a list of the lawsuits that he's filed. He's kind of like Kiss. Kiss is another one. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can't put anything by him because he's out there and he wants to corner the market, which he has on Kiss memorabilia and merchandise. So if you're out there and you're taking advantage of Kiss, you're going to get sued. Same thing with Don Henley. I think that Don Henley is just a smart guy. I think that, he does take it too far sometimes. But what this does highlight is one thing that I liked, the fact that Don Henley didn't ask for money for himself.
Yeah.
If you're going to sue,
that I will give him credit for.
Yeah. I mean, a settlement that directs the settlement funds to the Walden Woods project, that's a pretty creative way to resolve something and to take something where you very easily could have said, oh my God, Don, do you really need more money? I mean, you really don't. But
I wish he had taken it a step further and actually participated in an ad with this tag, and then a portion of the sales of the Henleys went to his project as well.
Yeah, I mean, he could have
take it tongue in cheek for crying out loud.
Yeah, I mean, he could have worked with this company, and they could have done something where exactly. I mean, let the company cover the cost for manufacturing the shirt, but then send all the proceeds to Walden Woods. There could have been even more creativity coming out of this, but I think that I think he's just one of those guys, and I like him. I like his music. I like him, but I think he's so protective of his name and reputation that sometimes it can just go a little too far.
I literally don't know how you can trademark a personal name.
It gets to the point where you can, because of the branding associated with it, like Madonna. I think that it just, you become a persona more than you do a person. And I think that that's, once you reach that level, listen, nobody's going to be trademarking my name. But I think that when you get to that level of Don Henley, you can absolutely do it and protect it. And I don't know. Sometimes I do think that it goes too far, but I guess there's a part of me that says, well, I mean, would you want somebody to make money off of your name? It's not fair. I don't know.
Do you remember the ads? Was it I can't remember. Was it a bunch of guys named Ronald McDonald?
Yes.
For Wendy's or for Burger King?
Yeah. Ronald McDonald.
How is this different?
Well, I love that commercial. I thought that commercial was so clever. I think that the difference is, they were Ronald McDonald. Every single one of them, really, they were Ronald McDonald. And so I think that go ahead.
You were donning a Henley. You were taking it easy. Well, I fail to see the difference. And that's why I'm not as smart as most lawyers or judges.
I don't think it has anything.
Or the people at Duluth Trading Company.
Yeah. Has nothing to do with smarts. I think it's just, I think that people take themselves too seriously sometimes. But that the bottom line is capitalism. And I think that capitalism can sort of curtail creativity, and capitalism can make you look, I want to get paid, I want to be able to live, but I just don't see the need to step on everybody in the process. And I'm not saying that he did. I mean, he's obviously justified to protect his legally filed trademark, but I think that the world would just in general be so much better off if people were not so poisoned by the idea of capitalism and stepping over other people. But that's never going to change.
There are no. And there are at least 80 people named Donald Henley, according to Intellius.com.
So I guess if you create your own shirt and you say, I am Don Henley, do you have a lawsuit waiting for you?
Exactly. Yeah. Named it after myself. I didn't name it after you.
Right. And what if you were taking it easy?
I must have taken it easy. That's right.
Yeah.
Take it any way I can get it, as the attitude goes.
So I think, it is what it is. And I guess that's why some people have so much money and other people don't, because they're willing to go that extra step. But I don't know.
Just goes to show you that if you're inventing something, if you're coming up with something, never hurts to get a trademark or a copyright lawyer, a patent lawyer involved.
No, I mean, if you're going to go and look at the legal element of this, then sure, he did the right thing to protect himself because he filed a trademark. He was able to enforce it. And so from a legal standpoint, he did a right thing. From, a worldwide standpoint, I don't know. But I do think that the settlement was creative and at least money was diverted to an organization as opposed to his pocket. So that's a good thing.
Sure. Give that and nothing less at that.
Yes, exactly. All right. That's going to do it for today. A lot of good stories today. We had a lot of good discussion about some of this stuff. If, you guys out there, once you download, if you're not listening live, once you download this podcast on iTunes, if you want to add to the discussion, we encourage you to post your comments. I mean, we've got it here live on YouTube. You can watch it later on YouTube. You can download it from iTunes. Post your comments. Let us know what you think. We like to hear your feedback about some of our thoughts and analysis of some of these stories. That's what makes this fun and interesting. So make sure you do that. Don't forget also to check out utlradio.com. It's been updated, and there's all sorts of cool new things on it, including the Ask Your Question tab and the link to download the free app on iTunes. Also want to thank today's sponsor, iScribed Audio Transcription Service. Again, it's certainly something that I think everyone should check out, whether you're in the medical field or whether you just want some things typed. We're talking 89 cents a minute, and you're talking about a dual-step verification process to make sure that what you have dictated comes back to you accurately. So check them out. It's iScribed.com. There's a link below on the show notes where you can check them out. And speaking about the medical profession for a minute, I also want to remind everybody to, if you are in need of medical supplies, whether you are a doctor, whether you're a company or organization that needs medical supplies of any sort, if you are a therapy center, a physical therapist, and you don't want to pay the exorbitant fees that you have to pay for medical supplies by going through traditional vendors where you've got middlemen, to head over to mdsupplies.com. That's mdsupplies.com, and see how they can help you save up to 50% on your medical needs and your medical supply purchases. So check that out, mdsupplies.com and iScribed.com for audio transcription. Thank you both. That's going to do it for today. I will be back tomorrow with the business and legal Q&A live. We have some questions all set for tomorrow. I'll post them later so you know what we're going to be discussing. In the meantime, keep your questions coming, because it's the only way that the show continues. No questions, I've got nothing to talk about, if you believe that.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't believe it either. Neither would my wife.
I've been accused of listening to myself talk.
Yep. I get it from my wife all the time. When I come home at night, she says, I've been with the kids all day. I don't want to hear you talk, and I find it so hard. Need some. I'm going to be calling you tonight when I get home, because I'm going to need to just.
You got my number.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for today. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for participating. Thanks for downloading and sticking around and keeping up with us. We definitely appreciate it. I will be back tomorrow. Bob and I will be back next Monday with another edition of Week in Review. And we'll see what kind of crazy stories we can dig up this week. All right. Thanks to everybody. Make sure you have a good day. Enjoy the nice weather. Although is it raining by you, Bob? It's raining over here.
It rained last night. I'm sure it's going to rain off and on today. So I made sure I got my grass cut before it rained yesterday. So.
Very nice. Well, enjoy the spring, because we've had a hard winter, and glad that that's over. So until tomorrow.
Donna Henley, and take it easy.
Take it easy.